Good evening, residents of Litchfield, and welcome to the January 6, 2021 school board meeting. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do you have any revisions to the agendas?
We do not.
That'll bring us to community forum. Has anyone joined?
There is no one.
So, summary of non-public actions from December 16, 2020. Mrs. Harrison made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of December 2nd, 2020. Mr. Myers seconded the motion, carried by a roll call vote. Mr. Burke, yes. Mrs. Harrison, yes. Mrs. McDonald, yes. Mr. Myers, yes. Mrs. Hirschberger, yes. That will bring us to Chs Program of Studies.
So joining us for, this is our annual approval process for the Program of Studies, and we've got Principal Lonergan and Guidance Director Callanan on the meet with us, and I think the documents are shared with the board. So it includes a very nice summary document of the changes and then the actual Program of Studies itself. And so we'll turn it over to the high school to present.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming along and joining me here. Spent a lot of time working with the curriculum facilitators, with the individual contributors, trying to figure out, okay, what do we need to do a little differently? And certainly in these COVID times, that's impacted a little bit of what we've done, but it also really is about how to provide the most for our students in terms of programming. So the significant change, one of the really significant ones, is we had some challenging conversations with the teachers about alternating years for classes, and also about removing classes that haven't run in a long time. And the reason for removing those classes is they take away from kids. You might have 1 or 2 students or 3 students who want these classes. We can't run them, but it takes them away from the electives and the other opportunities to take classes that they might otherwise do. So I think we've got a decent document. I'm not sure, Jody, you have anything to add to that, but I do. I think maybe the simplest thing is to walk through the changes if you want to do that. And Jody created a great document for us, as she always does, for that.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Bill, too. The alternating year courses, that was something that we did prior to your time here, so maybe even 6-7 years ago. And we're back at that point where it almost seems a little bit strange to say, okay, we're going to take away the opportunity to run this course. But when you have, like you said, when you have 4 and 5 kids choosing a class, you can't run it. So then nobody's getting anything. You're just spreading yourself too thin. So by offering classes in an alternating pattern, it will be more helpful as far as enrollment is concerned too. And one of the things that the board, I just want to point out to you that you may not be seeing on your copy. I spoke with Mary Widman on Monday of this week, and I did make a couple of more updates to the Program of Studies to specify the years that classes would be running, so that if I fall off the face of the earth, or Bill does, or you know what, we don't have good memories. Bill and I are getting old, so I can't remember what I offered year to year. So at least by having specific years mentioned in the Program of Studies, that it's an easier piece of material to follow when you're offering up classes to students. So
yeah, it's like odd years and even years for courses to run, basically that type of thing, and just putting it down in the document so that as we move forward, we don't have to sort of backtrack and guess and wonder, but it really is a more concrete picture. So yeah. So anyhow, the changes, if you want to walk through us on it, that's fine. It's relatively straightforward. One of the things that we really did is we wanted to emphasize the number of students in a particular class to run it. And that's just sheer efficiency. You know, if you have 4 or 5 or 7, in some classes, you know, you come close to that in an AP course. But the reality is you try to push for 15 students in a classroom, and we made that clear in the document to start with. And so we had a change on page 4. There was just the competencies headline. There was it's supposed to be 4 summatives per competency, and somehow the wording got changed back to 4 formatives. So we replaced that and turned it back to what it actually should be, 4 summatives. On page 4, similarly, graduation requirements, AP Bio, Physics, and Chemistry. These have been added to those math-embedded courses that count as a 4th-year math course. Students in New Hampshire have to have their 4 years of mathematics, and those would qualify as those courses if students were taking them their senior year. Jody made reference to the alternating year courses. In business, we had no changes, though that's going to move straight forward as it is. Computer education, we permanently deleted those two courses. Again, this is representative. We're not getting the numbers to run them. You know, and teachers like those courses, but at the same time, the kids aren't that interested in them. Dig Pub, alternating years. We, again, permanently deleted advanced web design. We haven't had a call for that at all. We added advanced software applications, which will be alternating years, and then cybersecurity literacy class, a new course that'll be taught. Any questions on those first 2? Okay, so moving on. English, we've deleted all our foundations course. Am I correct on that, Jody? All the foundations courses are no longer offered, and that's basically to accommodate kids. We can accommodate them in a traditional classroom, and that also sort of matches up our numbers a little bit in your traditional courses. We've permanently deleted British Lit. Again, this is a course we would get 2 or 3 students who would ask for it, and that's it. It's a Mystery. This is one of those between It's a Mystery and Short Story. Alternating years on those to make sure kids have an opportunity to sign up for them, but again, not diminishing and deleting how much they're interested in those classes. Journalism, public speaking, contemporary literature, again, no signups. Kids just aren't interested in those courses. And again, it provides an opportunity to get kids interested in other electives. We added a statement there at the end of English 9, World Lit and American Lit, about major projects, creating assignments, classroom presentations. Family and consumer science, again, relationships is offered in alternating years, nothing other than that. Health and PE, we changed the name of Lifetime Strength and Training, and we also permanently deleted, this is an interesting course, the Unified Youth Leadership. And one of the things we're finding is we're really challenged by having multiple teachers teach that class. So what we've done is we've allowed students to use this as an opportunity that if they want to be in the unified PE classroom, they can use it as a sophomore and senior project in working with the teacher who's running that class, which is a more viable way of managing that class and getting kids the opportunity to do the leadership things that they want to do. And it also helps with those project-based graduation requirements. As far as math, again, we permanently deleted foundation geometry. Oops, I jumped here. Yep, and permanently deleted calculus. We have an AP Calc and two actually different sections of AP Calc. We also have intro to calculus for those students who aren't necessarily interested in going on to the really challenging courses. So calculus really wasn't one they were getting a whole lot of numbers in to sign up for as well.
So they don't have to take calculus to take AP. They don't have to take calculus first, then AP.
No.
Are they required to do
What's the
intro
sequence?
before?
Algebra 2, pre-calculus,
Honest-
calculus.
It's honors pre-calculus, and then it's AP calculus, AB, which is a daily full year class.
Yeah. So then we moved down to music and performance. Music exploration, that's going to be an alternating year course. Drumming, alternating years, We permanently deleted guitar ensemble. Our guitar courses are relatively new, but we weren't getting long-term commitments to running, and the numbers would have been really small in that, as you see with our intro and then the advanced guitar, your numbers decrease. So it wasn't, it just wouldn't have been viable. Music Theory 1 is going to run in alternating years. We permanently deleted Jazz Ensemble. Again, this is another one of those courses that really very challenging to get the number of students in there for that class. And then we did add Piano 2. Piano's turning into a decent course in terms of numbers, so our hope is to make sure that we provide those students an opportunity to take the Piano 2 as a second level. All right, I just lost my place here, so pardon me for a second.
Science is up next.
Yep, yeah, no, I was just bounced back to the top of the page for some reason. And along with the other foundations courses, we permanently deleted the Science 9 and the biology. We believe we can take care of those kids in our traditional science classes. Environmental science wasn't getting numbers at all to speak of. And we also have the AP environmental class for students who are really interested in that. So we've deleted that. Again, if you look at the AP courses, we're running those in alternating years. And Jody, I can't quite think of my head because we've gone over this how many times, but do you recall which we're running opposite each other? Is it physics and bio? No, environmental and bio are running opposite each other.
So I actually just re-looked at the course selection sheet that I have kids to hand out to students so they know what's available for the fall. It's just a review sheet. And so AP Environmental will be an option this fall, as well as AP Chemistry.
Yeah.
So those are the two that will be offered for APs. And then in 22-23, it would be AP Biology and AP Physics, which is the new course.
Okay. Thanks, Jody.
So do they not have any honors they do have honors chemistry. I think one of my kids is in that. Do they have like an honors physics, or is it just AP physics?
We do currently offer honors physics.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we still will continue to offer that as well.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No.
Okay, moving on to any other questions on those to this point? Okay, social studies. Again, if you look at the permanently deleted courses in there, they're courses that will not get any real tread. Foreign relations, social entrepreneurship, the Constitution. We permanently deleted recycling, but in a way we haven't. It's been taken over by Amy Paradise and her students, and this is another one of those opportunities where some of our students who want a sophomore project or senior project can assist in running the recycling program in cooperation with Amy. So while it's deleted from the course catalog, we're still making sure we run the recycling program. We have advanced, Jody, the advanced applied economics, that's deleted, correct?
Yes, it is. Did I not put it? Oh, I forgot the word just dropped off. But
Yeah,
yeah,
no, that's what I was
we've
thinking.
never run it. Yeah,
Yep.
we've never run it.
Correct. I will say that we spoke with Nate Cooper this afternoon, and right now we've talked about running Vietnam War opposite of a new World War II course. However, the social studies department was really interested in having those offered each year. So while it's going to say in the course catalog opposite years, we're not entirely that they want to go along with that. So we're going to have a further conversation with that. My concern, as with all of these, is if we offer them the same year, I don't want to minimize the social studies interest in electives, because we do have some of our other electives that they really like, psychology and sociology.
Law and ethics.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to make sure that we're cautious about that. And then there was an adjustment to the description of world studies, which is a little different from what we had last year.
Bill, sorry, Bill,
yes,
just one thing with that world studies description. What we ended up doing was we reverted back to the description or the original structure of the class that we had had. So for those of you who have juniors or seniors, your kids last year just had world studies, world global studies. It was a semester, it was a year-long, every other day class. So for this year, though, it ran as world studies European for a quarter, and then world studies, what was it, global?
Global.
Yeah, exactly. So what the social studies department found, it was just too difficult to try to match up how to split them up that way. So rather than split up as in global for a quarter and Euro for a quarter, now it's going to go back to the world studies global as it previously was.
Yeah. Okay, visual arts, we just deleted digital art, wasn't a course where the numbers were getting that significant. We have other digital courses that they can take. No Spanish and no changes in world languages, so Spanish will be the same. Again, this is going back to additional credit off. Notified with that recycling and conservation. So we do a nice job working with those students and really changing the curriculum around a little bit, which will hopefully be making it to the perk, just to look at some of the changes that she wants to make. And then we also added some information about earning PE credits to varsity athletics. We've always had this. It's always been I believe it's been an opportunity, but very, very, very seldom has anybody, it hasn't in my time, and Jody, I don't believe it's in your time, anyone's taken advantage of this. So,
We do now.
Go ahead.
We did have one this year.
Excuse me.
That's taking advantage of that for them this particular season of sports. So.
Yep. And so that's it. Now, I'm not sure if anybody has any questions now, or if you want to send some questions to Jody and me via email. It's been pretty straightforward. I did, in my introduction letter to this, I did mention, this past year has been impacted by COVID and has presented some challenges. So that's, the only real thing in terms of the intro letter to the program of studies.
Just so you guys are aware as well, like the next steps in this process is once the program of studies has been approved, I then send this to a printer. I only print enough copies for 8th grade students. Each 8th grade student receives a copy, and then an electronic copy is then posted on our website for anybody else to access through the years.
Gina?
My only other comment was that in the description for science courses, there is a typical pathway. Am I breaking up?
Yep.
And that lists the foundations classes as a prerequisite. So just to clean that up, the housekeeping.
And I'm not sure that's the only place that I've seen that. I think I may have seen it somewhere else. Yeah. So Jody, we can look back through and
Thank you.
It's maybe one or two sections in there.
Sometimes when you look at something for so long, you become blind to things that it takes fresh eyes to look at it. Expected.
Absolutely right, Liz.
If you just did a search for the word foundations, you'll pick them all right up. And
yeah.
That's exactly what I'm going to do. Yep. Thank you.
So I have a question because I saw it this morning, but I can't seem to find it now. Because we talked about recycling being eliminated, but it was in the course of studies this morning. And it was talking about for a sophomore project, but I can't find on the page that I saw this morning.
Let me take a look.
It may have been at the end, maybe near where I talked about VLAX or something towards the end. You can see I'm like dreaming about it in my brain right now, but that's where we mentioned we turned it into the unified recycling.
Okay.
So I think I took it out of where, weirdly, Brian,
it was in social studies.
It was under social studies for years. Yeah. And I think it's only because Dennis Perot, it was his baby. So it made no sense that it's under social studies. And Oh my word, people used to tell me, oh, yeah, this should count as a social studies credit. I said, I want nation, because not here, we're not. So
Sounds like
yeah,
you're fine
we had
on
to
43 right
take
now.
it. That's why I took it right out of social studies and I put it into maybe other. Bill, do you happen to see that?
Yeah, I'm looking,
Have
I'm looking
43
right
listed, I
now,
can't
Jody. I'm
find it.
trying to find it. Give me
Oh.
just a second.
Should be
Additional
highlighted.
credit offerings
Yeah,
after
that's what
world
I'm listed.
language.
Prevention, recycling, and conservation under additional credit offerings.
Right here
Page 43.
Yeah, yep, that's right. Yep.
in yellow, right there.
All right, so it's still listed for a course, correct?
Yes,
All right, because I thought you said it was eliminated. It was just eliminated out of social studies.
correct.
All right.
And it's,
So my question then with this course, at the very beginning, we talk about that a course, you have to have at least 15 students, correct?
Yeah.
This is highlighted that the most you can have is 14.
In recycling?
yeah. And this.
Yeah, that's
this-
the limit.
Yeah. This is also a particular course in that many of the students are really exceptional students.
Yeah.
So we're not going to get 15 students. We're probably going to get 5 to 6 maybe, but then you might get some other students who sign on for sophomore project, senior project. But you'll see that Amy runs a pretty intensive program. So it's several adults with 6 or 7 students, or 4 or 5 or 6 students.
Right, I understand. So it brings me to my next question. You're saying you're not going to get more than 5 or 6 exceptional students to take this course. Well, that's a problem we ran into at AP Bio that I'm concerned about for next year. If we don't have 15 students for AP Bio because we don't have 15 exceptional students, are we going to run it?
Yes.
When we had proposed some of the course sizes, 15 was our target goal, but with advanced course offerings and some of the other specialized courses like this, we did allow, I think 10 was the number that we had. And then
Yep.
we had to use the judgment between 10 and 15, depending on where it fell. But there were courses like an AP Bio where, the numbers were not there, Brian. And so,
I understand, but
Yeah.
it doesn't state that in this.
I know it seems like you're looking for problems if you're going to say
Right, it
you're
says
not going
15
to run
at the
about
beginning.
15, and then you run 5 in AP Bio, but you cancel an 11 class of something else because they're not AP student.
So I think we have to outline that. I mean, at the very beginning, it states the course will be run if we have at least 15 students.
Right.
And nowhere in that I see other courses say, this will run with 10, and all of a sudden you hit something like recycling, and it says no more than 14.
Yeah. Is there a number on any other courses other than recycling? So there's the blanket language, but is there any others that are specific?
I
The
didn't.
science, right?
I can double check on that in the morning as well. I can make sure that there.
I think you still have to be careful with that 15. If you're going to be running AP courses with 6 and 7,
But that's,
you're just going to upset families.
I didn't think we were. I thought.
we
10
weren't.
Well,
You
no,
said
but
at least 10, right?
if they're saying
Is that what it was?
that, then why don't they just say, instead of a number, just say course numbers are reviewed by staff and adjustments made as necessary.
Yeah.
You're putting a number on there, and if you're going to allow one course with 8 and then cancel another course with 11, that's
Right.
It's just not.
No, it's a really solid point. And remember, the decision-making starts as early as March when the signups come in. Part of the high school strategy that I hope the board is seeing here is making the program of studies more streamlined.
Mhm.
So instead of scattering everybody across a bunch of courses, we're trying to focus and to say, this is what we're running. So hopefully the numbers won't be as scattered as they were last time. So this will help us to make sure that we're at 15 in these courses. And then we'll continue to work as a team when it comes forward. And I think ultimately, if we have courses that are under the 15, but we feel that, they're capstone opportunities, we'll come back to the board and say, here's a course. This is why we think we want to run it. And just let the board be aware of where we are with those. So we'll be coming back to the board later in the spring with where we exactly fell.
I just think we need to be clear and is get the information out as soon as possible so we don't run into the same type of issue with AP Bio.
Correct.
And I'm sure there could be other courses, the same thing could happen. That there it is in the course of studies, my child signed up for it, and all of a sudden now you're telling me it's not available.
But I think
Right.
too, just in defense of the AP Bio thing, everybody going into the course request phase now knows exactly what the goal is and what we're striving for. The high school faculty have been engaged in making the program of studies leaner and more clearer transparency about why we're picking the courses that we want to run and when we're running it. So at the end of it, I think we're in a better position right now, and we won't have a June outcry of, what do you mean this isn't running? Hopefully we're in a better spot.
And I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but just what Brian's saying, you're just very specific with that 15 students in that one line.
Which line is it?
It's under scheduling procedures. It says, in order for a class to run, there must be a minimum of 15 students who request the class. If there are under 15 student requests, the class will not run. It just
Will be reviewed by
Yeah.
high schools.
shouldn't it say
Yeah.
we shoot for, obviously I'm not the most eloquent person. but we
Rob,
shoot
which
for
page?
15.
Show me so I can see
Page
it.
3. It's highlighted on
Page 3.
It's definitely a better way to word that.
It just seems like you're potentially upsetting people.
So we can make that a target,
Yeah. I just wonder if that's the target instead of will not run.
Yeah.
I think that's really good feedback for us, because we don't want to lock into something too rigid on this as we keep trying to work our way through it. And the reality of high school scheduling is it will ebb and flow. Students will migrate. They'll go
And I
one
think
direction.
my whole thing is I understand that. I'd hate to upset somebody because we cancel a class. Like I said, we cancel one class with 13, but we're running a 6. When that's common in high schools, schools do that for different reasons, but it'll be a lot less explaining if you're not so concrete there.
Yeah, we can do some editing on that sentence, I'm sure. And keeping in mind, the big picture hover above it, we have an elementary principal sitting here who is saying classes of 6 or 7. That's just not the reality at the other schools.
Right.
And
We also talked as a board last year that we couldn't afford to run classes of 6.
Right.
And that's where the whole AP Bio came, and then we got enough students to sign up for it. But I just don't want to, again, end up in the same position again next year.
Yep.
So I can take out that limit number under the unified recycling and then just make some edits to page 3 that Rob just pointed out. That's not a problem.
Who teaches recycling? Is it Amy Paradise?
Yes.
Oh. Got it.
Are there restrictions on what students can take? Like what level junior, senior, sophomore, freshman? Are there restrictions on what classes those grades can take? Because I'm just thinking like we're making a lot of several classes every other year. So are we making any accommodations on the other end for younger students who perhaps want to take some of these classes? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see that. Yeah. There, you do have your really talented kids who just thrive on mathematics and science. So there's the one area where you can come in as a freshman and you can take geometry and you can take biology and bypass algebra 1 and bypass the freshman science class, which provides them a little different opportunity to take more of those science and math AP courses.
But Bill, doesn't the 8th grade team recommend whether your child should skip science or skip the basic algebra 1? The math teacher will tell you whether your child is recommended to go into geometry or recommended to go into biology. And then I always thought that, I'm sorry, Bill, that it's not first come, first serve, but the seniors kind of like, you'll see a class like World Drumming that will have freshmen, sophomores, seniors, but you don't see a lot of seniors in the freshmen in the business classes because that's more of a junior class. Is that right, Jody?
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, a lot of the electives are for juniors and seniors are based on prerequisites that need to be completed before they can get to those points. So that's where, that's kind of the hurdle when it comes to that.
And if you think about scheduling, you're going from a prescribed program at a middle school. There's some choice of like maths, for example, but by and large, students are taking the subject matter. Toward the senior year, you're getting to this. Really, in a perfect world, the seniors are designing that career, secondary focused interest-based schedule that's going to meet their individual needs. And then in between, you're sort of moving from one toward the other model. And so it does become self-selective, and things like course prerequisites. In order to take an advanced business course, there may be some prereqs that need to be met in order to access that.
But it's also under parent control. One of my sons took Spanish 1 again freshman year, and the other one bopped right into Spanish 2. It's up to you. If you think one of your kids can skip, needed help with Spanish 1 again, everyone has a hand in it. And Jody and her team are really good at helping too. They'll come to they used to come to the middle school and help everybody.
And it does. It's really great. Last year before, we started a Google sheet that the 8th grade team enters a student's name and then just every subject across, and they'll check off a box about which course that they think the student belongs in, and then that information goes to the student. They put it on a course selection sheet. And the 8th grade year, you might remember, Liz, 8th grade year is the only year that I require a parent signature on that sheet. And I still have them way back from 9 years. So I could look back that far, but so it does, a lot of people have a different say in like what level might be the most appropriate. And then Andrea Stern takes that information and she dumps it into the system so that the English, the math, the science, and the social studies and the PE fundamentals are already entered into, well, this year Power School for the student. So incoming freshmen really have very limited options, in all honesty, when it comes to what we're trying to get as many state requirements done that freshman and sophomore year. So,
and you know your kids better than anybody. I went by the teacher recommendations, and one son was finished with Spanish 3 sophomore year, and the other son will be finished with Spanish 3 junior year. It's all and then he'll have more options.
I guess mostly just as long as the juniors who want to take that elective that only runs every other year, if it hits on their junior year, that they have that opportunity to do that.
And that's why we have to be super smart as counselors this year about the science, because, and I've already warned my counselors, if we have, specifically for our current sophomores, those high-hitting math science kids, we need to make sure that they're aware. Guess what? If you want AP biology, you have to sign up for it in your senior year. And if you want AP Chem, you're going to have to sign up for it in your junior year. So we have to be very good about getting that information out to kids too.
But what if they took honors chemistry their sophomore year? So does that mean they don't take AP chemistry, or do they go into like AP physics? And fascinating.
They can. There's actually many different avenues you can take. It kind of depends on what that student's interest and strength is in, because if it's if it's a physical science the more interested in, I would direct them in one particular way versus if it was environmental science related. It just really depends on that student's interest, if they're aware of what their interest level is.
And they also can take college credit courses if they run out of AP options or don't want to go the AP route, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I have a number of seniors right now that are taking what's called early college, and that's through either Manchester Community College or the option of Nashua Community College. Depending on the class that they take, if it's STEM related, the state actually can help fund those classes for students. So students can take up to 2 college-related STEM classes all this year at least. Who knows if that money will run out. But if it's an English and you're a senior and you just want to take English 101 to get it done in your senior year, you can sign up, maybe do an online class, and it's 50% discount. So instead of paying $1,000 for a 3 or 4 credit English class, you're going to pay, $400 generally for a 3 or 4 credit English class. So I have maybe up to 6 seniors who are taking advantage of that in semester 2 already.
Jody, can you, so one question that came up during the budget process is about similar courses being offered at Pinkerton and at Alvern. Can you just explain for the public, why is it important that students have access to welding in both locations, for example? And how do you decide what is best for a student?
Well, that's a little bit of it's a gray area for sure. I mean, we are in a district 16 for the CTE in our state. It's considered division or center 16 or something that our town belongs to. Pinkerton's actually in a different division than we are. So they do us a favor by allowing our students to go there. So I always tell students, our first line of defense is to have you go to Alvern. That is our home school. That's also location-wise, it makes a lot more sense for our students. They miss a lot less time out of the building too. But having the opportunities at Pinkerton, sometimes welding closes at Alvern, but Pinkerton might have openings. So then I tell students, if it's a program that both schools offer, it doesn't hurt to apply to both locations. And then if Alvern can accept you, that's the place that we would prefer you go there, just again, because of time standard as well too. But Pinkerton offers programs that Alvern doesn't also have, like cosmetology and different computer science, networking, and video. Bill, think about
TV production, yeah.
Like Michaela Short, who just graduated in June, who is now being under some national recognition potentially for the videos that she produced through Pinkerton's program. So it's kind of weird. I tell students in some cases, apply to both locations, but let's get you to Alvern first, just even because of proximity, if nothing else.
So a really good point I didn't think about is they only have so many seats in Alvern.
Right.
So if, so we really are providing greater opportunities by accessing both centers when you have a course that's offered in both. I get the overall, it's more opportunities because you just increase the number of courses by having a second center. That's excellent.
And I understand that part as far as space, but you keep saying that you suggest to them to go to Alvern. Can we require them to go to Alvern if there's an opening for them? I mean, that was a whole discussion as far as the budget committee is like, where can we save money? So if you have a student that's going in by themselves on a bus to Pinkerton for a course that they could have gone into in Alvern, why can't we require them to take it at Alvern?
Well, but keep in mind too, Brian, that it's not an individual shuttle. The bus is going to Pinkerton anyway, with students who are accessing the other programs. So, adding a body to it's really not.
No, but is there a possibility that that group of students that are going to Pinkerton at the time could actually go to Alvern? And I'm not sure if that's the case.
Not all the courses are there. So a
Not
student
for all
going to
programs,
video.
right.
So now if you add a welding student on the bus that's going to bring the video kids anyway, it's not
Right.
costing us any more from the budget committee angle. I mean, the bus is already going.
Unless you have 3 or 4 kids that are going to Pinkerton that could have gone to Alvern.
But then you have diesel mechanics at one school and the other school doesn't offer diesel mechanics. And that seems to be a popular thing
Right.
among
No,
the
I'm
kids.
not talking about different course. I'm talking about the same welding and welding.
No, you're right. If it was a bus with just welding students
Right.
going one direction 5 miles and the other direction 15 miles, that doesn't make any sense. But that's not ever the case, I don't believe. I think it's
No, definitely. And I've the last couple of years, I've saved money by knowing that, okay, if you only have 2 kids, and we've never even had that, maybe 3 or 4 kids that are going to Pinkerton, more often than not, I call up and have a conversation with those parents in the summer, and I'll say, are you willing to allow your child to drive and fill out the transportation paperwork through the superintendent and provide the proper documentation? And right now I do our morning crew at Pinkerton. There's actually 5 students and they all self-transport with permission and all the paperwork and supporting documentation. So we actually did save a bus to and from for the whole year in one trip. So
Good job.
you can tell the budget committee, I did save some money.
No, and that's great because I mean the question is just being asked because the budget committee asked, why are we going to 2 different schools? Why can't we just go to one? And we realized part of that was course offerings, but even on top of that, now that if they can self-drive, that they do so. And I think opening up as many courses as possible to the students is fabulous, and cost saving is even more fabulous. So,
Is the tuition the same at each of those schools?
It is not.
There's $100 difference per student.
Oh, that's not bad.
$100 difference?
Yeah, it's a little more expensive at
I
Pinkerton
see.
than it is at Alvern. And the transportation is a little more expensive to
because
get
it's
there than
farther.
it is at Alpert.
Okay.
So it is a little more.
But look at the vocations it opens up. It's
Well, that-
priceless.
yeah.
Right.
Not every kid is a school kid.
But the other part of the story
still a school.
is,
Yeah, well.
if you
a
weren't
book
sending
kid.
students
No,
there,
there's a better way of saying that.
Great.
if you weren't sending students to either center and had to educate them fully within Campbell, it would cost you almost twice as much during the credits. So that's the other part of the story. When you send a student to Pinkerton or Alburn, you're leveraging federal Pell Grants that are funding those programs and are paying a substantial amount of the cost. So you take all those students earning 2 credits for 2 years, that's 4 credits. You bring them back in-house, and now you have to provide those 4 credits in-house. It will cost you more money. So the actual bargain is accessing these programs.
And you explained that to the budget committee.
I was waiting for you to say that, Mike. I mean, that's the one thing. It's $1,000 a course, roughly.
Yeah.
For a kid. Yeah.
At the centers versus about $2,000 a credit at Campbell High School. So it is cost effective to access these because of the large amounts of federal funds behind them.
So with that being, have we ever considered, not to give you, sending students for like regular courses? I know we've kind of like kicked that around a little bit, but I'm just thinking like we just had the conversation with AP Bio and other courses that don't have that many students to utilize like an Alburn or Pinkerton. Hey, listen, we got 6 students.
Ooh, I see
that want
smiley
AP Bio.
faces.
Oh, you have 6 students who want AP Bio.
Yeah,
You can't
yeah.
offer it.
We've had those conversations in the past.
I mean, we're not the only district, right? We're not the only district with declining
Enrollment.
student count. That I would think that these other schools are probably in the same situation. Who knows? You know, maybe they could have 5 in the class, they could fill the class up.
That was
Good.
true actually this year with AP Spanish. So we couldn't run AP Spanish because I think I only had 4 or 5 students who were interested. So I asked Bill, I'm like, are you okay if I reach out to Steve Beals over at Alburn and just talk to him about if he'd be willing to take on these students? And actually he was. He said, yeah, we'd be more than happy to take on your students. In the end, it was our students who said, no, forget it. I'm going to take XYZ at Campbell instead. But so that olive branch was definitely offered up to us.
Well,
Yeah, we did that with French, back when French was disappearing. We had that conversation with him about French as well. He's always been willing to entertain the thought of our kids going over there for other courses.
at the same time too, that it works both ways. That, you know, we could give Alvin or Pinkerton a call and say, listen, you know, we have 7 kids in an AP Bio class. We need 3 more to fill the class. You have students who want to come over. I mean, I just is happy getting kids coming in than sending more out.
I think the other thing is, so having these conversations pre-COVID and thinking about distance learning technologies and so forth, I think one of the benefits that we're going to get out of this is our eyes are all open to what the possibilities are. And so, you know, you're talking about sending kids over. I'm thinking what we're doing now. I mean, we couldn't have imagined a year ago doing what we're doing with a meeting. So I think that it's going to really open districts' willingness to have conversations and share resources and to think differently about how those resources are shared in the future. So it's exciting, but first we have to get out of the pandemic. It's overwhelming right now to think about that. But when, you know, we get back to some normal and it's a new normal, I think you'll see an awful lot of that. All right.
So next we have something on final exams.
So just on the program of studies, do you want to come back next meeting?
I would think so. I think, yeah. She's got to change some language to begin with, and
Perfect.
I can make those changes tomorrow and I can reshare that to Michelle Flynn and she can share that out with all of you. Yep.
yeah. And that just in case some members haven't had an opportunity to go through the courses, they'll give them that opportunity to do so.
Perfect. Thank you.
So talking about final exams, we are not planning on doing final exams again this year. We did not at the end of last year. And what we really are moving towards is the idea of competencies and summative competencies so that those kids who are doing okay They're fine. Their grades are up there. They've passed all their competencies. If we go to what we're proposing, which is a 2-day, 2 days instead of 4 days, but 2 days of all of our class meeting, and those kids who are challenged, who are struggling, whose grades are down, who have failed competencies, will have the opportunity to work with their teacher for 2 days in order to recover competencies that they have not passed.
So no one's ever going to fail a class now.
Say that again.
So no one's ever going to fail a class, and our kids aren't going to learn to do high-stake testing. I'm going to stick to my guns here. Our kids need to learn how to take tests. Sorry, Bill. I'm getting a little feisty.
No, that's okay, Liz. That's all right. We already do high stakes testing. You know, we already do the.
But they all equal the same as like a little project on a Google slide. They're all the same. I can't wrap my head around this. Sorry. I guess what we're looking at is really the idea. Back in 2008, the state went to you need to start doing competency-based education. And we've been doing that since then. Campbell has been at the forefront of it. But I think when you think about competencies, there are still high stakes assessments that kids are doing. Okay, and I look at some of our classes and look at the work that they're doing, regardless of whether they have a final exam or not. They're being challenged at really, really high levels. So to take one test, in particular a test that's not norm reference, a test that isn't necessarily, and I'm not slighting our teachers, but you look at real efficient, effective candidate testing. It's very scientific, very methodical, very, very data-based, and I can't say that that's what our final exams have been at Campbell High School over the years, any more than when I was a teacher. That they were those types of exams. What I do know is our kids come out really prepared, whether it's going into the workforce of the military or college, or their colleges and community colleges and those things. But I do think if we're serious about competency-based assessments and competency-based grades, then we have to make the competencies mean something. And we're still stuck in the traditional 0 to 65 is an F, and 64 and 65 and above is an A, B, C, or D, and that's what matters. And you have to have a test that says that's what matters. I think they need to be weighted. I'm going to stick to that again. Summative tests should be weighted. Formative should be weighted. Practice is practice. I'm not letting go of that. Because I think they should count as more. And I don't agree with final exams either. I think they're stressful, but I think there should be higher stakes on certain things. There we go. It's out there now. Some things should count for more, whether it's a gigantic project and then your end of the year honors English paper or whatever. They should count for more than a Google slideshow on the life of Twain. Sorry, Patrick, you're just sitting there. You're my punching bag today. All right. That's just my personal opinion. I'm going to stop now.
Yep. Nope. You're entitled to it. I get it. We look at AP exams. Kids going to take an AP exam in the spring, right?
Yeah.
The high stakes testing matter. There's no question about that. I think, however, that I struggle with an end of the year test that says that grade now goes from a 92 to an 84 because of one test, you know? And
I get that 25% or whatever. I was weighted way too high. I get that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I'm done. I'm off my
soapbox. So the plan is to do 2 days of allowing students to recover, giving their teachers the opportunity to work with them, to recover the competencies, and to salvage a grade and a credit. That's the challenge here. And Liz, I understand nobody will fail. I get that mentality on it. I can't say that that's going to happen. In fact,
know there's always those few. I have a few of those myself. Not my own children, but some of my students that just checked out. Yeah.
And what we do want is teachers to have competency summatives as we close out the last few weeks here, to give those kids a chance to demonstrate on the various competencies that they are doing well. And there's another reason for that. And this comes out of what the state did back in 2008, 2009, when they said that you have to provide students the opportunity to essentially, comp out, to test out of going through a class. So if a student says, I can do Algebra 1, let me take your summative competency for Algebra 1. And if I can pass that, I can go on to geometry. Well, if they don't have a competency assessment from us, they get to go to the state and take the states, get credit for our class, and never have to take it. I want to make sure we're keeping our kids in classes where they belong. And that's another piece of this, is that summative competency is a way to make sure that child and that parent says, we want to take geometry, we're okay with the Algebra 1. Well, let's take an assessment that says you're okay to do that. That
So you're
you
going
have
to
the skill.
remediate formatives for them to retake the summatives to pass the class. We call it remediation.
Well, I'm not sure that
Or
it's
teacher
remediation.
discretion,
I'm
I
hoping
get
that
it.
I'm hoping it's offering them more opportunities to show what they know, what they understand, and what they can do.
Different assessments?
No.
Oh, okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No, you're welcome. So,
That's happening a lot at the college level too, Bill, as you know, and I've talked to you about this, is that now, I mean, I can talk even from my own personal children going through a technical college like Wentworth to St. Anselm. Then neither one of my children in the last year finishing college have even taken final exams. Now it's final projects and it's final papers that are 15
Oh, that's
and
good
20
to hear,
pages
Jody.
long.
That's good to hear. I haven't heard that. Thank you for sharing
Oh.
that.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, I said, hey, what happened to the day of, I was joking about it. Oh, and actually, I took another student from Plymouth State who had the same thing, and I was joking. I said, hey, what happened to the day where you cram the night before, hurry up, take the test, and then you forget about it? They were working on like days and days and weeks for final projects for
With that little
their
blue
4
book.
classes.
Ooh,
Not anymore.
the little blue book.
So that was Plymouth, Wentworth, and St. Anselm. Very different schools, and all 3 kids were handled the same way.
in WPI, in my son's case, WPI, he never did a final exam. Everything was
No, it's kind of
project-based.
project-
Everything was
project-based.
collaboration and competencies. And things of
Sometimes
that
it's
nature.
harder than a test at that age.
I'm sorry, I missed that, Liz.
Sometimes that's working with others is harder than taking a test for some kids.
Yeah,
Many people.
yeah.
All
We
right.
heard that in our remote learners parent meeting yesterday, that collaboration piece. So that's our proposal. Our proposal is to take, and now this is for the current students right now who are ending the semester, is to take 2 days, and this would be January 25th and 26th, I believe, which is just before the start of the new semester.
Yep.
The other reason is, for one of those days, is I'd like to take some time, which is Wednesday. Hopefully, we're back in school. But to take Wednesday, those last couple of hours, and have the remote learners come into the school to meet their teachers, to walk through their schedules like we did at the start of the school year. So I think it just makes sense for whatever students are still in remote, they're going to be switching teachers and they're going to need an opportunity. So that's another piece of this end of the semester, first semester, start of the second semester. But what we haven't talked about is students from last year. Going through first semester and then the spring semester and then the end of the school year, we have a number of students who did not pass their competencies and failed their courses, and some of them were within a couple of points of passing their courses. And so we've been talking about how to provide them an opportunity to recover those classes. And that's a little bit different of a situation because we're going back now 9 months. We're going back to, they're not going to have the same teachers if they do a competency recovery. So what would that look like for our students? And we've been talking with this curriculum facilitators. It's primarily in English and social studies. And it's, Jody, 25 students, maybe more, maybe less. I'm not sure the actual number.
About 25 from the first semester and maybe about 15 from semester 2.
So we're talking about 40 students who failed classes, who were not provided an opportunity to recover. And in some cases, that won't be, bless you. In some cases, that won't be difficult for them to do, but we need to provide an opportunity.
Then what are the other 360 kids going to be doing on that day when those 40 kids are competency recovering?
No. We're not talking about doing this during a school day. No.
Oh, okay.
No, what we're talking about is it being self-funded. We would have to
Okay,
either,
like summer school. Not that I know
either
what
ask-
that's like.
I'm sorry, Liz, I didn't hear that.
Like the summer school model you had before, self-funded?
Yeah, but not, yes, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely that. And talking about doing it over a period of time, after school, so that they spend an hour a day for maybe 2 days a week, for maybe 4 weeks if they need to. And keep in mind, this is not about content necessarily. It's not about all of those experiences that they should know from biology or from World War II or from whatever course it may be. It is really about recovering the competency, so demonstrating the ability to analyze or compute or whatever it might be, depending on the course. But it's a way to provide them a chance to do that, which may be for some students, it might be 3 days, a week and a half, and they're done because they only needed one competency and they knew what they needed to know, but they couldn't demonstrate what they needed to demonstrate. For other students, it may not take 3 days. It may take 5 days or 6 days, depending on the number of competencies and depending on the challenges of the material for that particular student. But got a failing grade because they failed the recovery, it would allow them to recover their grade. Okay? Because I think a child who gets a 72 and simply fails for a competency, you ought to be able to get your grade back when you recover the competency.
What if you fail 3 competencies?
I'm sorry?
What if you fail 3 competencies? Is it only like 1 or 2 or?
No. One of the things we've looked at is typically a student who fails 3 competency doesn't have 50 average typically that's the standard.
That makes sense,
you have a 50 average or better, and you pass at least half of the competencies. Okay.
Oh, all right. So there are some ground rules. Yeah.
Of the competencies. One of the things we've done is we've expected those kids to retake a course. Okay. Because it's clear that they don't understand, they don't have the skills, they can't apply them, they can't do those things that we've expected them to do.
Thank you for all that clarification. Now I'm really done. I promise. I'm going into my computer.
I think there was some confusion. Maybe I'm kind of getting every other word for some reason, but so the current students who are struggling, that is the 25th and 26th that you're talking about doing the recovery with those kids for the current failures. But the after school, that's a separate group of kids that failed in last year. So that's a separate set of students, but that's after school. Did you get that?
Get that?
The kids from 1920 who failed.
Oh, okay.
They're going to be the after-school program.
They didn't get the opportunity to recover last.
I just don't want those
Yeah,
kids missing any more school or my kids
I
to
hope it was
miss.
2020, not 1920.
Yeah, but I don't want the other kids to miss school for competency recovery for kids. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think 2 things though. In a final exam schedule, the high school traditionally has had 4 days
Right.
of final exams with kids coming and going. Now it's 2 days. There'll be kids coming and going, and students who have mastered the course may not be there because they're working with and doubling down with the kids who have struggled, right? So that's cutting it from 4 days to 2 and doubling down on the ones who need it.
So my kids won't have school maybe.
If your students are all having met competency and in good shape, they would still have the 2 days quote off because of the way the final exam schedule was anyway. So now the students who will be there are the ones who need the attention and recover the credit and will be avoiding a summer school experience down the road.
But my kids are missing 2 days instruction.
They were anyway.
They were anyway.
They were missing 4 days.
4 half days.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Now I
So
get
it's
it.
the same math in terms of
Okay.
that.
Thank you for clarifying that.
And the high school staff will be dedicated to struggling and resistant learners. And you know
Which
what?
is fair.
There's a carrot stick, which is if you're close to passing competency, get it done so that you don't have to come in those 2 days, right? So there's another incentive built into this model.
I don't see anyone coming after school.
And then the other, sorry, they're spraying doorknobs. You got to love what happens during a meeting. And so that's a piece of it. And then the other are the students who couldn't have summer school because we couldn't run a pandemic summer school.
Right,
so
right.
we need to get that mopped up. And that's what Bill is proposing for
Awesome.
that 40 students. So
I get it now.
it's win-win. It
Yes.
really is.
It makes so much more sense to do the competency recovery after the first semester too, rather than waiting till the
Yep.
entire end
Yeah.
of the year.
That would be a great time for kids to do college visits too. The
Yeah.
ones that want to visit college visits.
Yes, yes.
Or work on a sophomore project or do some of those other
Senior
things. that
project.
they-
We'll catch up on
Right,
this.
senior
You done,
projects,
Liz?
yep.
What? Watch
Done.
Tiger King. I don't know. What?
Just one other quick thing to point out, and this is going to come up when we do the COVID update, but I just want to point out while Bill and Jody are here that the high school is about to do something they've never done because of the 4x4 that they adopted in order to minimize contact for students, and that is to end courses mid-year. Now, you've done it if you've had a half semester course, right? But everybody is going to end courses in January, and everybody is going to have September in January when you start 4 new classes. So the fact the high schools thought ahead to, hey, we have remote students who we want to experience this, new courses, meet teachers, et cetera. I mean, it's a transition that's taking place. I always called it Christmas in July kind of concept, that you get this fresh start in the middle of the year. You bring closure to a course and you get a fresh start in the middle of the year. And for the high school faculty and high school students and families to experience this is really a big shift in the way schools operate, high schools operate. And so I think it's going to be refreshing, and the school has to put a lot of care and attention into finishing a year, not taking 2 months off to start a new year, taking a day off to start a new year. So that's the other thing that will help with this 2-day transition piece, because we're asking people to pivot. I'll use the word. You're pivoting from one year to another in the middle of a year. And so, all of this has to be carefully orchestrated to make it go well. But they're on it. They've had the conversations and are aware of that. So
I think it's a good plan. I like it. All right. Anything else for Ms. Lonigan or Jody? Liz? Yeah, really. Liz is done.
I'm done.
You guys are done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, they can't see me.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good
All
night.
right, good night, everyone.
But for kids that don't have, people who don't have kids at the high school, this is a lot to take in. Confidence, recovery, and
Good
even like Tara's looking at her kids going next year. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a good conversation. All right, that'll bring us to correspondence.
Unmute. She can't see me.
There you go.
That's me. The last correspondence that we had was from December 16th, which was the day of our last meeting. We had Debbie Rice wrote in to thank us for staying in person whenever possible. And Steph Silver wrote that she was in favor of a snow day rather than a remote learning day. And that was it.
All right, thank you. Somebody was too busy Christmas shopping. All right. So that will bring us to superintendent's comments.
Yep. So a couple of updates. I want to talk about the budget hearing. So the board should have this marked on your calendars for January 14th. It's Thursday night. The budget committee, that's their hearing, so they will be the ones running it. And I'm going to actually ask Brian and Michelle and Corey, I think, attended a conversation dialogue about how to do this last evening, mainly because the concept of everybody coming to the auditorium and having a traditional budget hearing is not the only way to do this any longer. So I don't know if somebody wants to give a quick summary of.
Well, we discussed a lot of it. It started off by actually the election, how the election was going to work, and whether or not it was going to be like a drive-up election or it was going to be a live election. The concern was brought up as far as the new strain of COVID. If that comes and brings in another wave, that what are we going to do? But the big thing, then we went into the budget hearing and deliberative session itself. So first was the budget hearing that it was determined that we would do it in the gymnasium, such as we did for the special vote earlier this year, where there's ample enough space to accommodate the amount of people who generally come to a budget hearing, only even less than a deliberative. So we can definitely space them out within the stands if need be. We can put seats to the left and right. So I think there's plenty of room to coordinate that. And same with the deliberative session. One of the things we talked about, again, with deliberative was trying to minimize people coming and going. It will still be the same amount, but doing it in one day. So doing both the town and the school. And I don't know if we've talked to legal yet as to whether or not they're available.
Yes, today I talked to legal counsel, and February 6th seems to be the day of choice. January 30th, they booked up. I coordinated with the town administrator, and I believe he's going to bring that to the selectmen on Monday to make sure that we can all do it on February 6th.
Because I know their legal is available 6
Right.
also.
And the budget hearing is going to be virtual.
That was in the email.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, the
It was
email that
deliberative.
came out from Troy, just kind of summarizing the meeting yesterday, the budget hearing on January 14th will be 100% virtual. And then
Deliberative session.
deliberative will be in person both the same day.
Which makes a lot of sense. We're only, disrupting and being inside the gym on one particular day. And I think they'd probably end up going in the morning, correct?
They will probably go first. We're going to try to iron out the time in case they want to go a little earlier, but our legal counsel is pretty much open. So she's good with that day. I think that is probably the best way to do it this year to minimize exposure as well.
Yeah.
Get it once and done and then.
And I think also we're fortunate because we had a discussion last evening that I think both presentations are going to be a little shorter than normal. I mean, if you look at what the town has for warrant articles and what we have for warrant articles, I don't think there's going to be nearly as much discussion as there has been in the past over some of these warrant articles.
Yeah, I think it was noted that two of our warrant articles are basically identical. They're identical warrant articles. The discussion will be on one. You're not going to discuss it twice, so that will limit some of the time. In terms of the election and voting day, there's the recommendation from that group yesterday is kind of a wait and see approach. There is some legislation coming down where the moderator has some flexibility to be able to move that day. I think he can only do like 72-hour increments and then would have to, reissue that each time if he has to continue to move it. But I think it's as late as July.
It sounded like legal though for the town so that he can do it 2 weeks out.
Yeah, well, deliberative session is the 72-hour delay. He kind of ran those sentences together.
Yep.
Yeah, the election, SB2, Senate Bill 2 will determine whether the moderator has the levity to move that election to May for an SB2 town. And
Well, and to be clear, that's a brand new SB2.
Correct.
So it gets confusing when you talk about being an SB2 town.
Yeah.
This is a current legislation SB2 that's looking to modify, and it'll basically, instead of the RSA that says you have to have the meeting on the second Tuesday in March, it inserts or April or May or June. So it allows the town to pick the second Tuesday in the ensuing months. So,
Right.
But that's a new, and the sense is that what's in there makes sense and people understand towns are going to need the flexibility, but we'll have to wait and see what the legislature
And
does.
that's what we said, because you have to give notice to all residents through the mail, like a 7-day notice if we do a drive-up election.
well, if you follow HB 1129, House Bill 1129, if you decide, the governing body decides to hold virtual meeting for deliberative, then they have no choice but to do a drive-up election. However, for the virtual meeting, they have to hold 2 virtual meetings. The first one to inform voters about the procedures, and the second one to go over the articles and amend or revise or whatever the case may be.
And it's similar to what our special vote was. I mean, Michelle's going to get together with Troy because there's a whole list of dates that you have to follow and the requirements, like within 7 days, within 14 days, and so on. But Frank then described what the drive-up election would be like, and it's not a pretty picture. And that's why we talked about then if it does end up that, and if we can push it out to the earlier months, then it's going to be a lot easier, I think, to take care of where more will happen outside.
Where it's warmer.
Yeah.
But two dates that Michelle is going to push out to everybody. You'll get an invite, and it's for the Thursday, the 14th. It'll be a virtual meeting, but lock that in because you'll have a role or need to be present, I guess. And then Saturday the 6th, right?
Correct.
Is the other date. So we'll get an invite sent to everybody so that you know those are the 2 dates. Perfect. And the other piece that I have for you is the enrollment report. And if you take a look at what we have shared with you, Basically, we did the enrollment snapshot on December 18th. And we have that we gained one student at Griffin, and that was I'm looking for it, a kindergartner actually who enrolled. The middle school also gained a student, but it was kind of an up and down. They lost a 5th grader and they gained 2 6th graders. So, is that right? No, they went down 2 5th grade, up to 6th grade, and down 1 7th grade. So there was a lot of ins and outs taking place at the middle school. So it was an overall gain of 1, and the high school stayed the same. So those are our numbers that we have for you, and we'll keep monitoring them.
Thank you. That'll bring us to school board comments. Hearing none.
I
was waiting to see
have
my
something. I was able to attend the remote forums for parents that were held by each school with the principals, and I think they were. I think a good discussion was had at each one. I think a lot of parents voiced some concerns and some kind of glitches and things that need a little bit more work. Some of the common themes were having to follow 3 different schedules for each student based on whether the students are in remote or if they're in person or if it's a Wednesday and where kids are. So it was the major themes were kind of the schedules were tough. The technology, there still continue to be glitches and things to work on. It's not always consistent. It's not always used consistently from teacher to teacher. So that kind of stuff. There were some concerns about being able to return to in-person instruction, whether or not, everybody would be comfortable with that, or are we going to, kind of keep caps on numbers in the classroom or make accommodations for students who want to come back in. And then just a general kind of feeling of negative connotation towards remote learning. Some parents phrased it as feeling like a second-class citizen, just kind of, we're going with the flow, we're making do the best we can. I thought it was a really good dialogue. The principals were really attentive and listening and seemed to be very responsive, and that they said they would take that back to their staff and to Mike and Mary. So there are some improvements that I think we can make moving forward so that it's a better experience for everybody, including in-person students when we all go remote in the future. So I just wanted to thank the principals for letting me attend and listen. And I thought it was a good thing and hope we do those more often with a common sentiment.
Tina, just two quick things.
Yeah.
So I think we all kicked ourselves at the end of the Griffin session, which was excellent, that we didn't think of doing this in September because,
I know. Yeah.
And I just want to kind of acknowledge that with remote parents that, with everything else on the radar, and we were doing surveys, we were collecting feedback. It's not as if we weren't sensitive to it. But boy, that was a great session. Dan did a really masterful job of listening and writing down what he can. And then I know he's had follow up with his staff already today. So, and again, we were all sort of like, how did we not think of this earlier? And so just for parents, I think, we can commit to continuing that.
And I think that was kind of the message that I got from it too, is that in all of the hubbub to open school and keep it open and make sure all our students and staff are safe within the building, remote was kind of like, okay, we'll get to that later. It'll be fine, but we'll get to it later. And so I kind of renewed I'm going to keep advocating for those remote learners and making sure that remote families are represented, and we continue to solicit that feedback on how we can get better and make improvements.
And from the gate, as we kind of conceptualize this, we really envision them being school-based conversations because the needs and the way that each school has designed this differs. And, there were some parent comments yesterday, I guess. I wasn't in the session. I actually had a prior commitment. I had asked the principals, I'm like, do you want me there or do you got it? And they had sort of said, no, we're in pretty good shape. We got this. But then there were comments that it was like a lack of support from the district, which is not at all the case. The district is very supportive of these conversations and so forth. I did ultimately end up sitting in on the GMS conversation. And Mary Widman, who is the curriculum director, attended the middle school and the high school yesterday. So
When did this happen?
when did what happen?
This meeting?
The conversation with the Griffin remote parents was Monday. And we specifically invited the remote parents to attend.
Yeah.
And then the conversation with the middle school and the high school was Tuesday afternoon.
Did you receive an invite, Liz?
Nope.
Well, you're not a remote parent, are you?
I'm not, but I received them. I received one.
I didn't get an invite.
You did.
I did for, I believe, GMS. Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah. So
Get any
I
invites?
No.
It was in each of the principal's newsletters, and then I asked if I could attend each one. I'm currently a GMS, an LMS and a CHS parent. But I asked if I could also attend Dan's just to see what people were saying.
I didn't see it in any of the newsletters.
I don't get all the newsletters.
Yeah.
And I'm really good about reading those. Interesting.
So at GMS, I didn't put out in the general because I really wanted to target it. And this was just kind of not well thought of, but my strategy going in was I really wanted to be a targeted conversation between like Maura and myself and the parents. So I followed up with Tina and Mike afterwards. So at the beginning, when I kind of laid out what the session was going to be and did the introductions, I didn't even mention that Tina and Mike were there because what I didn't want to do was have the conversation turn towards.
So why couldn't I have been there?
Hmm?
Why couldn't I have been there or invited?
You could have been.
You
Liz.
could
It
have.
wasn't any effort to exclude anybody. It was really the forum was the remote parents and to hear the feedback from the remote.
I would have
parents.
liked to have heard feedback. I'm just saying. Would you have, Tara?
And
Well,
Dan, to be
again,
fair,
my fear
I
was if you
quiet
were
through
there,
your
it would have
entire
turned
meeting,
into feedback
but I
from
did-
parents to the board and skipped right over me. For this one, I wanted it to come straight at the school level.
But they knew that Tara and Tina and Mike were there.
No, what I said is I did not mention them.
Right.
I
No,
explicitly
they were there.
The
they
only
were
way
there. There may be a square, but
Oh, okay.
I had more squares on the screen than were actually there. So when I introduced, I said Maura and I here to listen. I didn't say like, and so are Dr. Jetty and Tina Harrison from the board. I just said that, and they may have noticed, but I was trying to control the
Were
flow of the
teachers there?
dialogue.
Did you have any teachers there?
No, I wanted the dialogue to just be remote parents and building admin.
Because I heard
Just so we
there
could
were
have
teachers at the LMS.
that kind of intimate fireside
the
chat
middle
conversation.
the middle school session, there were 15 teachers who joined in and were there listening also. The high school session, there were no staff, is my understanding.
I don't
And
think so,
so,
unless
again, they
they
were-
also had students.
Which one?
Unless they also had students. So,
Yes.
a teacher at the middle school or the high school who was a parent was there. And I did speak at the LMS and the CHS to voice my concerns as a parent, but not as a school board member.
You had a teacher at yours, but she had a parent.
I had a teacher who was also a remote
Parent.
parent.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
so, the
Yeah.
teacher who attended. So yeah. So in
Yeah.
fairness, teachers attending at Griffin had a parent hat on.
The other problem too, Liz, if you were there and Tara was there,
It
then
would
you
have
would have
looked like a
quorum.
board meeting.
Yeah.
I just hate being
And that's
left
why
out of
Dan is
stuff,
here
or at
this
least
evening
knowing
to-
it happened.
Dan is gonna let
This
us know how
happens
his
too
meeting went.
much.
Yes. Dan is going to summarize that too.
Oh, Tina didn't. have a
But
summary.
Tina, just to be clear, I mean,
Yeah.
from the district side, I mean, when we engaged in the dialogue to do this for the remote families, it always was about school-based feedback.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, any other school board comments?
I have a quick thing, Brian. I didn't know if you received it. I was supposed to get, I did receive an electronic copy for the NHSBA Delegates Assembly that's coming up on the 23rd. And they said they would be sending a hard copy to you of the continuing resolutions and the proposed resolutions. You haven't gotten that yet?
Yeah,
I
But-
have a whole folder for you.
oh, there you go.
Oh,
But that-
okay.
But then again, I got my BJ's catalog that expired last week, yesterday, and I received my Kohl's that expired a month ago, 2 days ago. So it could be coming in the mail.
It could be on its way.
Yeah.
But I can send those, I have an electronic link, so I can send those to the board just to kind of review and see if you have any amendments or, we should probably kind of vote on how you'd like me to vote to represent the board
Yep.
at the assembly.
Did you,
Yeah, I was gonna put
That's
that
it
on
for
the
me.
next agenda.
yeah, did you receive the hard copy that
I
she's
have
looking
it,
for?
I have it with me.
All right, so it went to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it came to our office.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Can we drop it in your mailbox? Is that okay? Tina,
Me?
you want the hard copy? We'll drop it for you? Or you?
Oh, I already have it online because I'm the delegate. I just wanted to make sure that all of the board members got the information. So I can send that electronically, or they can pick up a copy
Perfect.
maybe at the SU
I
office.
could scan it in tomorrow
She
morning
has it electronically.
for the next, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I have it electronically as well,
Yeah,
too.
so I just want to make sure the paper copy if anybody needs it, but good.
All right, thanks, Mike
All right.
and Brian.
All right, so that brings us to public minutes for December 16th, 2020, the need for approval. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the where are they? December 16th,
December
2020
16th.
minutes.
Okay, Rob made a motion to accept the minutes. Is there a second? They talk at once. I'll second to move this along. Any discussion? So Rob made the motion, Brian second. With no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. So Tina,
Aye.
Rob,
Aye.
Liz,
Aye.
Tara,
Aye.
and Brian's an aye. 5-0-0. With that, it will bring us to Mr. Mitchell. Welcome.
I don't have the agenda in front of me, so I've just been waiting in anticipation for my name to be called. So,
Well, they've already stole some of your thunder.
I know, right? So let me go out of order now. But I know normally that principals would like to take this time to kind of highlight a specific program, and I was trying to think of a specific program that we're actually doing, and I thought really what I wanted to highlight today was actually the remote learning experience. And so we can also talk about a little bit about the poignant feedback that I got from the parents on at Monday's meeting. But prior to that, I also want to highlight a few other things that stood out since the last time we talked. One, which is I want to publicly kind of recognize Kristen Sturrett, who worked with Robin Corbeil and Mr. Isbicki to secure enough funding for first robotics Lego kits and dues for the amount of teams that we hope to run this year. And right now, where Mrs. Sturrett is now doing is I've asked her to come up with a safety and hygiene plan that I can then look at and review so that we can actually run that as an in-person club later on in the year. But the nice thing is that the funding was available. She caught that in an email or some communication, and she went at it. And so I think Mr. Isbicki, who I believe at the time was not well, but still was able to pull off that funding. So thank you. Also, publicly, I want to thank PTO, who has obviously not been able to do what they normally do during this time. But I will say that they still have pulled off a way to creatively support both the students and the teachers. They still figured out how to do our conferences dinner, and they still figured out a way to do the holiday luncheon, and they still figured out a way to create and deliver treats for the students. The one thing that we just couldn't figure out how to do creatively is run the holiday store this year. We talked about it. We had a lot of conversations about it, but we just couldn't figure out a way to do it and to do it make sense. So I know they were disappointed, but at the same point, they recognized the reality of that. If you want to skip later on to the program updates, a few things I wanted to point out to you before we talk about remote learning is this fall, we did take the SAS assessments in the 4th grade. And so the 4th grade students took the 3rd grade interim assessment. And so I shared with you in full transparency the results, which are not at all what we've wanted or have come to expect, but that is okay because the purpose of the 3rd grade SAS is also to set a baseline. That's the reason why the state mandated that we still give it so that we can get this baseline data. They're, again, lower than we expected, but also to add some context to this, the 4th graders took this SAS assessment after obviously the remote experience from last spring, coming in this fall to obviously a different physical setting. And then when we actually gave the assessments this fall, it was after GMS had, if you remember, our 7-day remote experience that happened in late October. So we're up against the state deadline. The deadline said that we had to get it completed by October 31st. We'd come in, I made a call to the state and I said, do we really have to get it done by October 31st? And she said, well, that's what the document says, but if you can get it done by November 14th, you're good. I said, great. So we ended up giving it that first week in November. We did it. And so now we have results. And the good news is, even though the results are lower, we actually have that baseline and we can prepare and we know where they were. We think they're artificially deflated just because of situations, but at least we have a number so that we can show growth and we can show something for our fourth graders in the spring. And we're not using that fourth grade spring assessment now to have a baseline where at GMS, at least, we can't do anything with, because we'd get that baseline data in fourth grade and off you go. Now LMS figured out. So at least we now have at least a little bit of window. And when you look at the interim assessments, that is the spirit of what those interim assessments are as opposed to the summative. So you get it, it gives you some information. We can target down, we can see where students individually in subsets struggled, as well as a whole class, so that we can help target some of the instruction so that we can get after that. Also for the board, as well as the public, I wanted to give you a quick update on where GMS stands with report cards. We will be doing report cards, we gave report cards in the first quarter, but they were comments only. And so now, after a lot of discussion, working with leaders, working grade levels, working with Mary Woodman, also working with Andrea Stern to get the finance, we do have a fully prepared and ready to go report card for second quarter. I'm going to say a few things, but also start off by saying I'm also going to be working on a primer for this to also send out to parents so they can see and understand how the report card is laid out. The report card is laid out that each subject will get what we're calling an overall grade. And the overall grade is going to be on a 1 to 4 scale, as opposed to a traditional A, B, C, D, F scale. That translates to a percentage range. Not exactly, but for instance, a 1 is 0 to 64, a 2 is 64 to 75, a 3 is 75 to 88, and a 4 is 99. And then under each subject area, we'll also list out the specific competencies for those subject areas, which will also be scored on a 1 to 4. But at the top of each report card, there'll be 2 1 to 4 keys. The one that's a percentage, and then the other one's a descriptor that'll go along with the competency. This is the best way that we figured out that we could grade and report on competencies, but also make a statement over overall performance in each subject area. This will be used for all of the main curricular subject areas, as well as the UAs. So when you do that, it ends up being a 3-page report card, but that's how it shows. And so in the second quarter, that's where the 1 to 4 numbers will show up. We still are staying with for first quarter, our report card was the narrative, the comments. So when you get a second quarter report card, there will still be a blank column under quarter 1. Quarter 2 is where the reporting using the 1 to 4 scales will begin. So that is ready to go. Andrea has been able to upload the templates, and now we're able to roll, and they've been auto-populating with using the new grading software. So we're good to go there. Now, just to give you a head up, and I'm not going to read the entire part, but I wanted to kind of highlight what we've been doing with remote learning this year, because remote learning, as I said, has been the program. It has been what we've been focusing on, because it was the thing that no one quite knew how to do, especially back in March when we were stuffed upon, but then coming into this year knowing that we had to create remote 2.0, and it had to be an improved experience, as well as it also had to be a synchronous experience for many students who chose that remote. So the only way that I could think about getting the feedback and capturing what it is that we've been doing with remote learning, I simply sent an email out to staff and said, can you tell me some ways that you have gone or learned or grown to reach our remote learners. And so what I just did was I copy and pasted for you 2 pages of their quotes, some examples of what they've done. Now, with that, you can read through and you can see that, one, there are creative ways to reach the students, but also in just reading it, what I recognized was the amount of growth in our staff. There's a sense of, I never knew we could do it that way, or I'm glad that I was able to figure out how to do this, or this has been a way that I could reach both sets of students at the same time. This was very valuable and an enriching experience for me because it gave me perspective. That's also what Monday afternoon's session with the remote families did too, which was it gave me their perspective, which I admittedly had missed. So the biggest takeaway from Monday, and Tina already spoke to it, and Mike also spoke to it, which was the biggest takeaway was, why didn't we do this sooner? And how often are we going to do this from now on? And so I think after thinking about it and watching the kind of pace of development, I'm thinking that 6 weeks seems to be the magic number of when we should do that. 6 weeks tends to be a good cycle where things can be put in place, you can test it out. And also 6 weeks tends to be that point where a conversation would be genuine, authentic, but also new. I feel like anything less than 6 weeks, it may be a rehashing of the old things. Anything more than that, and you're going to kind of let things go too long. So I'm going to be looking to schedule, at least with GMS, those conversations with parents for 6 weeks, because the feedback that they gave was, it was simple feedback, but I believe it was so poignant because it was a missed perspective from me that I have been doing things throughout the year. Me personally, I have a weekly remote learner lunch where on weeks like this, when everyone's remote, I'll get 40 to 45 kids. On regular weeks, I may get, 6 to 8. And that allows me to connect with the students. And so I can kind of get that captured there. But to hear that the students are missing that with the other students. It's a very simple piece of feedback, but it was a missed perspective. I just never even realized. We had been focusing on providing that instructional model and providing the curriculum and bringing it forward to them. And that's obviously a priority, and that's the purpose of what we're doing. But with that focus, it put blinders on. And it was nice to have that conversation, which just kind of, and it wasn't contentious. It was actually a very natural conversation where you just thought, and you could sit back and go, you're right. And so it was a valuable conversation. I'm not going to go into too many specifics, only because it was a conversation amongst parents that I could then pass on to teachers. I'm also not going to, because Tina and Dr. Jetty also mentioned a number of the things that were brought up. But it was that.
Do guidance counselors reach out to these students? That's what our guidance counselors at my school do. They have lunches daily with remote kids, so they're not left out of the loop. I don't know do you know what I mean? Like, that's always.
Yeah, so not specifically because they're remote. And oftentimes, especially when it comes to school psychologists and the guidance counselors, they know the students that are brought to their attention. And it's that just kind of general population of students. So those students who have been maybe struggling at remote, we know of, we can connect them. But really, the nice conversation was that we were hearing from the general population of remote students that these are just kind of the overarching feelings of, my kid misses the recess experience with other kids. My child, while it's nice and flexible, there are those times when he wants to know what's going on in the classroom when they have that, there are those downtimes, and they're kind of, those are the things that are missing from the remote experience. So having the conversations with the teachers today were just, when I presented it to them in our staff meeting today, which was just, I'm going to tell you what I heard. This is not a directive to do this. This is not a suggestion to do things better. This is simply, here is what I heard, and, for you to do with it as you wish. And I have to say that the faculty and staff today were just as receptive and in agreement. And I think it was, again, another moment where it's always valuable when you can recognize a perspective that you may not have even realized that you were missing. And so, again, the aha moment, as was already said, was, why did we not do this before January? And how often should I do this again? Because this is a valuable perspective that I think was easy to miss just because of the pace and the focus and the drive this year for other things that we had been focusing on. How do we provide that instruction? How do we provide that learning experience? How do we deliver this curriculum that we missed out on those non-curricular experiences and aspects of elementary school? So I was glad I had that meeting. So that's what I have for you. I know there's a longer report with some grade level updates, but I would, if you have any questions or
Parents did have the opportunity to, give that feedback through the surveys in the beginning of the year. So it's a different format and probably actually more meaningful.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was I think just having the conversation, you really got the responses and the feedback that you can't capture in the questions that you can ask on a survey. And because also the meeting went on for an hour and I took a lot of notes. And then when I look back on the notes, there was, I can't give it a number, but really everything kind of fell under like really 4 or 5 things. And then the other parents would say, oh yeah, and let me tell you how that's impacted my child. So there was some common themes that they could all then just kind of speak to.
Well, I think
well.
social emotional should go under guidance counselors if they're seeking social emotional things too.
Yeah, it's not under like big SEL like social emotional. It's really just the social components of recess, the talking to someone at lunch, or the hanging out at recess, or
Well, that makes me feel better.
yeah, there's aspects of these moments of connectedness that happen in a classroom. In fact, one of the parents
Or
said,
even riding the bus.
yeah, even riding the bus.
Want to ride the bus.
There was a parent who told a story that has happened and said that the way the teacher had been teaching, not the wrong way, that the screen had been on, and so that she could communicate with the remote students through the camera, see the whiteboard, see the interactive boards. But just last week, for some reason, and I believe it was because there was a sub in the room, that the laptop happened to be turned around, and that was the first time the student could actually see how the class the students actually interacted physically in the class. And again, the teacher was focused on the kids on the screen delivering the instruction, that just those simple moments of kids aren't perfectly behaved. So there are life skills that are learned with the whispering over to a friend, or, those interactions that you just naturally have that are somewhat removed. And so how can we create those for our remote students in this environment? So, but while yes, there are huge SEL considerations for everyone during this living with the pandemic, it wasn't that large, the kind of big SEL. It was more just
I'm just
there
hyper-focused
are
on
life
it.
lessons that you learn by going to school, and
Yeah.
those are kind of missing with the remote students. So how can we create those?
Excellent. With that, can we ask the other 2 principals to give us like an overview of what their meetings were like?
Sure, absolutely. And Mary has prepared notes from her experience, and we can share those out.
I think it's great. The more input, and that's what we talked about as far as the surveys, but I think this is more personal than a survey. And we talked about those at the beginning of the year, to put them out and find out like, how is remote learning going? What can we do better? But obviously when you get into a setting as you did, I'm sure you learned a lot more through just that one session than through all the surveys we've done.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the survey is, at some point, is going to get to the really how's it going kind of question. You're limited there. This was more of a situation where we could kind of ask the question of
Deeper
What
dive.
can we do better?
tell me about the situation. Tell me about the
Like good
experience.
questions.
And they were forthcoming, which was great.
And one anecdote is that at GMS, the principal records the daily announcements, and those are then distributed, right? So I think you send them to students Director?
So yeah, every morning, Maura and I, we just do a Google Meet recording of the
Awesome.
Pledge of Allegiance and the lunch, and we send it out to them.
And so what happens is when a student or a family gets that, they can watch it, they hear it, it's crystal clear, right? The middle school, the announcements are playing in the background, and a lot's being lost by the remote families because it's not being recorded. Now, that's a simple and easy fix, right? It's not a complicated process to record, but that was a piece, for example, that the middle school heard yesterday. And I think there's no reason why the middle school would know what Griffin is doing for announcements, right? So by bringing it forward, we can respond to it pretty quickly.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dan. Does anyone have anything else for Mr. Mitchell? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And if there's, again, as I said last time, if there's something specific that you'd like to know for the next time, just feel free to reach out and I can prepare my report around that topic.
Sounds great. All right. You can head out, Dan, I think. We don't need him, do we?
He's welcome to stay or welcome to go.
See ya.
Oh no, you're gonna make him make a choice?
Don't.
We're going to pass those out, just leave them there, we'll grab them, or
What was that?
the papers?
Oh, this is my physical copy.
Oh,
Was-
I thought you had one for us. I'm sorry.
Did you, because I,
It's linked.
I posted it for them.
Oh, I read it. I read all of it. Yep.
Okay,
I saw
just-
the quotes and
We
everything.
have it.
yeah, unfortunately, Christmas break, there was a little bit of a delay getting those grade level reports, so it should be all updated.
Yeah, I
It is.
posted the updated one
Okay,
for the
perfect.
board.
Yep. I read
I
it.
didn't read it last night because I didn't see it last night.
So you wouldn't have
So
known there
I
was a
will read
difference.
it.
I beat
So
Clara to
it's
something
news to
finally.
me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That'll bring us to Mrs. Vicky with the EA report.
All right, so the documents that are linked on the agenda, just basically soup to nuts what the budget process. As you go through on the municipal services website and enter the information for the MS-27, which is the budget committee's document that they'll approve at the public hearing. Once they've voted, as you enter those, you have to put the warrant articles in and into the budgets by function. So the first two documents that are linked are the draft warrant articles as prepared by Michelle. The second one is the system generated as I entered them into the municipal resources portal. Also in there, you have to put in the line items for the default budget. So I've included with that, because there's not much detail on the default budget form for the state. I put the default calculation, which is my summary of where the items were pulled, what was carried forward, what was taken out, and such like that. Within the MS-27 is also the revenue projections. So those are in there, and those tie out to my tax rate estimate, which is at the bottom, which notes what the estimated tax rate impact is per thousand, along with what the impact is by home valuation. So as we've known, the default is higher than what's being proposed right now. So that impact for the default is $1.01, and the impact for the operating budget as proposed, as it stands for from the budget committee, is 60 cents. They look inflated as opposed to prior years, and that is partially a factor of the change of valuation in the town. So kind of have a reset in the amount of the tax rate, where it's $15, now it's 12 something, and so the increases look a little more inflated than they would normally. So that's the information I have as of right now. If anyone has any questions, I believe Michelle brought a copy of the default for approval of the board.
I have copies of that.
Yep.
I have, the MS-27 didn't have a signature page.
The MS-27
Right,
gets
that's
approved
for
by the budget committee.
to sign, so
Yep.
we get it, okay.
Yep.
The only thing we need is the board to vote on Article 1.
Is that the operating?
Mhm.
They had not voted.
They haven't finished.
No, because we didn't have the amounts of the
That's
last
right.
one.
That's right. So now on the warrant articles, you note the total gross appropriation and default budget amounts are now in that article.
Right, but the budget committee hasn't finished with it yet.
Not totally, no.
They get final review tomorrow night.
Correct. So we
Yeah, I
can't-
think once
can't vote on
they,
it yet.
once
I was
they
just-
finish, they will
Yeah,
do the votes
I was just
on
pointing
that.
out that the board hasn't voted on that
But the
yet. so-
default is set.
Yeah.
The default we can. So you,
Can we vote pending no changes to the?
no, normally we wait until we have the dollar.
Yeah,
amount.
wait until, I think traditionally it's been the meet after the budget hearing to do the final vote of the school.
The
You wanna
default,
wait till the next meeting to sign your default and everything?
we can do the default now.
Okay.
We need to vote on it. But you mentioned revenues. So where are we right now as far as revenues for 22 in comparison, say, to like this year?
Let me see. I mean, I think the real big impact that we're going to see in terms of loss of state revenue is going to be in the area of catastrophic aid, which is special ed funding,
Yep.
where that's based on the needs of the students. So where traditionally we've had 100,000, maybe a little bit more than that. Now we're looking in probably the $18,000 to $25,000 range based on the students with those needs, and that's projected to continue to go down. The state aid funding, adequacy aid, adequacy grants, that's going to remain fairly consistent. I mean, it is coming down, but we did have the large fiscal disparity aid that we received this year, so those amounts are going to come down.
But do we have the numbers yet from the state?
Yeah, they are on the tax rate estimate page. So those are down about $190,000 in the education grant stabilization fund.
Corey, am I correct that because the legislature has just convened, there are some questions about exactly, I mean, we're ballparking some of the revenue projections, or
It's based on, the revenue projections that come out are based on last year's October 1st, I believe. They come in from 1920 numbers, and then they adjust at year end to make any. So they do give you an estimate, and then as enrollment adjusts, it'll shift.
and then if there were legislative adjustments, but
Which could happen. I know there is still a committee looking into the equitable aid and making sure towns are treated fairly, but nothing has really come down and been set in stone yet with that.
So I guess that's what I'm asking. So the revenues right now aren't exact.
They're estimates. Yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
we don't have real numbers yet from the state.
We have what they provide as an estimate.
yeah. Which page is it in the, I think there's a
On the MS 27?
yeah, so the MS 27, the revenues are on page, this is important that we think about because there's been a concern from the budget committee
That's
about
fine.
massive reductions.
Yep.
And I think, based on the projections we have,
They start on page 6.
page 6. Page 7 on mine, I think.
That gives you the
The page
total.
number on the document or the,
At the bottom on the MS 27 draft, if you go to page 6, it says page 6 of in the bottom
Okay,
right
perfect.
corner. It starts with local sources. And there are ones on there like local sources such as food service sales. Those don't go to the general fund. So those get taken out and applied to the food service fund. Federal program grants, that goes to Fund 22. Disability programs, that goes to Fund 22. So those are outside of the general fund.
But I'm just reviewing the numbers. I'm not seeing any massive reduction in our projections based on what we're here. Okay.
And that was the question. And again,
No, the major ones are on anything that changes big would be on the state side, and that doesn't get reflected in the MS 27 because they apply those
but we haven't seen those numbers yet.
the ones that I have on the 2021 tax rate estimate form.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I was provided on November 1st. That's the preliminary estimate.
And that was the
The
190.
5.4 million and the 1.9 under state education tax.
And that's 190,000 less. Is that what you said?
Adequacy grant is 190,000. It looks like 190,000 less, and that's based on actual enrollments. So there was some hope that maybe they would we had more of a drop in enrollment than we probably would have had we not been in the pandemic and the remote situation. But they have to go but based on state law, they have to go on exact numbers.
And because the one-time expenditure, the infrastructure money, the special meeting park, so that's not really reflected in here as a massive drop because we chose to use it as, toward future building projects or current projects.
And I kept them on that tax rate estimate form. I kept them separate so that it doesn't look like a.
And that was
drop off.
always received with it being a one-time intent. So, some districts used it to fund the budget and, but now have to make it up. We didn't do that. So that's just another key thing. Because somebody might say, well, you got this 700,000, 660, whatever it was. But remember, we always saw that as one time. So you're not seeing a big up down because of the way we dealt with that. So that's important to remember. I mean, somebody could say that's what I'm talking about, but we received and dealt with it as a one time. All right.
Excellent. Thank you. So we have the default budget to vote on, correct?
I'm not sure. It's not a vote. I think it's just a signature page. I don't think you have to vote. Just sign it.
And do we
Yeah,
have
and
that?
I think if you vote on warrant article 1,
Then I'll incorporate both.
wait till both numbers are accurate.
Yeah, but we can sign
Yep.
that sheet.
So here
And
comes a
Maybe
sheet.
Tina can come in and sign it when she has a chance.
You want, is
Copies.
it blue or you don't care?
Blue would be great. Here.
Pass the blue pen.
Oh, that's the blue pen. That way you could tell it's an original.
Well, the state gets picky about.
Oh, they get real picky as to, and they don't like black ink.
Oh, well. They grumble about green too. I don't know why.
They don't like green. Because you
You and your
can't fax with green, that's why. Or red.
All right. So the other thing I think maybe we want to do at this time too is on the warrant articles, as we've done in the past, is who wants to speak on the article. And as in the past, Article 1 will be, the budget committee will be presenting because it's their budget. And we obviously can have conversation afterwards, but then we have articles, let me forget the numbers right here. Take a moment to open. So Articles 2 and Articles 3 are both the same for tech integrators. And then Article 4 is the $100,000 for the Capital Improvement Expandable Trust Fund. So I don't know if there was anyone who had an interest in talking about Articles 2 and 3. If there's anyone interested in Articles 4.
I think you might want to give her.
I don't
the blue
know.
pen.
I don't mind doing 2 or
The blue
3,
pen.
unless that somebody else does.
You say 2 or 3 or 2 and 3?
It's really one.
They're identical.
It's really
I know.
fun, yeah.
I didn't know she said or.
Doing that, unless somebody else wants to take it.
Does anyone have an interest? They're all jumping out of the seats right now, Tina. Yeah, I think we'll just do it as in the past. If you want to do the lead on it, and then obviously if we have anything to add, we can add to it. And I said it, I think in the last meeting that, just if you do want to, I mean, we'll connect with Jason because I think he'll give some good input as far as, the direction of what that position is going to do. And then Frank's gonna be looking for who's talking. And then, does anyone have an interest in Article 4? Yeah, no one's even looking at me. I'll take Article 4.
No, I saying where you were part of where you've been part of the facilities, and that was part of the capital.
Yeah.
Capital plan.
In the past, we've had a PowerPoint to go through some of this, do we want to develop another one? I'm trying to think, it's virtual for the hearing.
Well, the budget hearing is virtual. We still can present something.
But the budget hearing normally is done just the budget committee's presented.
Yeah.
The budget, yeah, D'Angelo will build the deck for the budget
Right.
committee, but you could send him.
But we've had one at the budget hearing too,
Yeah.
for the other articles, because I think they take on Article 1 is theirs, but
Deliberative, they do Article 1, they present, and then we present the
Right.
other three.
And 2 and 3 are both the same. I mean, I don't know if we really need to, it's a position. I think it's really just like pointing out, or discussing what the need is for that position, why there's a need for that position.
it's really a couple of slide decks just summarizing what that position will
Yeah,
do. But
I would just make sure it's minimized, that's
Yep.
all. It's,
And I think people need to really understand what Article 4 really is.
yes, Yep.
Because they might get that confused with the capital reserve.
right.
and the point that I said to Corey earlier is that we were given $70,000 last year for that article. Now we're asking for $100,000, yet we haven't spent the $70,000. So I think we need to be clear as to why that money has been spent and why there's a need for more
Well,
money.
And we haven't
To
spent it
continue
yet.
When
We've spent
ongoing work.
we spent a portion of it, but there's a ton of work to be done between now and June.
Mhm.
My gut is there won't be a lot left by June.
No, I know, but I'm saying, I think that's the point we have to present. So, because someone will ask the question, well, how much do you have in there right now? Well, we have 65,000. You got 70,000 last year, and now you're asking for another 100. So I'm just saying, I think we need to make it clear as to where we're going down the road with it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and the amount's consistent with the capital plan that was approved by the.
The 100,000 per year
Yep.
for the 6 years.
Excellent.
All right. Does anyone have anything else for Corey? And that'll bring us to committee reports. I'll start seeing them. I have most of them here. So the budget committee will be voting again tomorrow. I believe it's their final votes. They'll be voting on warrant articles and the budget if there's any other changes. So I'm not certain if that meeting is going to be live or just on video. So I think we'll know tomorrow. Andrew's looking to find out who wants to participate live or whether or not we do it remote. Then the other is the Facilities Improvement Committee, which we met this afternoon prior to this meeting. It more or less just went over. It's pretty amazing and we saw it as it was described by Michelle as the Reader's Digest of the listing of all the different reports that have been and studies that have been done on GMS. And she's going to send it out to the rest of the board, but put links to all these different reports. Obviously, some of them are very lengthy. Some of them are a little old and outdated, but it just tells you the extent that it's gone through as far as studies for the new school. It's pretty amazing. But I mean, the bottom line is, I can't remember the year now. Was it 13 years ago that the state, when they walked through looking at GMS and basically turned and said, we're not going to give you any money to do any improvements or additions to the school, basically because of the water table and just the condition of the school and what was needed for that building. And nothing really has changed since that period of time. So I can't imagine we'd go to the state and say, okay, we want 25 million to make this building new. They're not going to do it. But that report, like I said, will come out and you can take a look at all the different studies that have taken place just for that particular school. We also received an update of all the HVAC upgrades that have been taking place and the work is still in progress. And Dave Ross actually shows the picture from the high school of what they had to do when they had to. There was certain ductwork that was within the ceilings that the only way to get to them or get to the filters was basically drop the entire ceiling in order to change the filters. And so what they've been doing with those is more or less cutting holes in, putting filtration systems in where they're accessible. So now that you can just pop a panel and just go ahead and change the filter. But there's quite a bit of work that has been done. There's still a lot of work that has to be done, but it was really positive to hear how much has been done and how far along we've gotten. So,
Brian, I thought another key thing, if you could summarize, was the cost of running our schools compared to other schools, because it's really, engaging with energy consultants who have the knowledge on how to dig into this has been important.
Right. And that's part of what our conversations have been, because these two gentlemen have been involved with upgrades of schools, designs of new schools, insulating schools. And so the conversation began as far as where we stand, as far as on the average by the state of what our cost is and the consumption of fuel and not even consumption, but like letting it out the window. So he gave a number that was like, well, we'll use like GMS. I think the average was, I can't remember exactly what it is he was measuring, but let's say it was like 50 or 60. And I believe GMS was like at 120, almost like double.
Yeah, kilobtu's.
Yeah. We're so basically like one of the worst schools in the state as far as energy savings and just the condition of our schools. And all three schools were like the same way. GMS, well, actually he said GMS, then LMS, I believe, was the one that was costing more per. So
it was more dollars at LMS because the heating source is different. The fuel is different. I think that's how it was. Because at first it seemed like a contradiction.
Oil versus propane.
You have to go back to the cost of propane versus the cost of oil.
But when you're looking at the averages, like say 60, and GMS is almost double that, you can just see how much savings is lost just because of the fact that poor insulation, poor windows, poor heating systems and cooling systems. And it's not just GMS, it's all three schools. I mean, we're way above average. Dr. Jetty said at the meeting, he goes, this is one time he said that I'd like to be below average. And I made the comment, I'd like to at least be at average, because there's a lot of dollars that can be saved. I think GMS was like $60,000 can be saved.
I think that was the quote he threw out.
Yeah.
Annually.
You
do have to invest to realize that, but then your return on the investment will be fairly short.
But again, it's really positive, the fact that we are still going forward with updates to the HVAC systems in all three schools. Not as extensive in GMS, obviously, because the hope is that there's a new school down the road. But we continue to do upgrades, we continue to find problems and continue to resolve those problems. So it was a good conversation. Is there anything else, Corey? No.
Nothing else that I can think of at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, so the numbers were CHS used 96.1 kBTUs, and that's square foot by year. LMS was 91.8 and GMS was 117. And the average for the three schools, the average use for schools in the Northeast is 65. So that tells you how inefficient we are.
And the schools that we toured over in Hollis were at 0.
But one of them was positive.
And one of them was making money.
Yeah, the Hollis
That's right.
Montessori was at 9 before they added the solar array, and now it's net positive.
Right.
So just again, is it possible to really cut the energy costs? The answer is yes, totally. So
Drastically.
it's incredibly exciting work, and I think it's headed in the right direction, and it can position us to save taxpayers a lot of money and also have our schools be models for others. Right now, we're not a model.
When you're looking at,
We're model bad.
look at the year, I think the data he had was for 2020. He was talking about where the high school's spending $190,000 a year on electricity and heating. And you look at these numbers of the inefficiency, there's some significant dollars to be saved there.
And that's what we're working on. Good. Was there anything else, Corey? I think that was about it, right?
Yeah, that was it.
All right. That'll bring us to new business, our second reading of JLF, which is reporting child abuse and neglect.
I'll make a motion to approve policy JLF, reporting child abuse and neglect.
Tara made a motion to accept the second read,
I second.
and Liz second. Further discussion?
Mike, are we gonna do yearly refresher training on this?
That's our goal. There's a whole series of yearly refreshers that we need to do, but we want to keep this front and center.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying your name. Yeah, or say aye after say your name. Tina,
Hi, Tina.
Liz,
Aye, Liz.
Rob.
Aye.
Tara.
Aye, Tara.
Well, you didn't have to see a name. I made that mistake. Brian's an aye. Motion carries 500. That brings us to old business.
So we're on the coronavirus review and update. So one thing I want to point out, the question that Mr. Myers asked about training for this, the one key thing that helps with reporting child abuse and neglect is having contact personally with children, right? So the state has repeatedly said that the number of cases being reported is way down, mainly because students aren't in school and aren't engaging with adults who often are the first line of hearing and learning about concerns. So, having the policy on paper updated and refreshed and aligned with the law, that's important work. But it also points out, again, another example where school teachers and paraprofessionals and other employees are vital links to making sure that a child who's in distress can have that report made and then help made. So, it's just really important, I think, that we update the policy, but we also acknowledge the role of the educator in helping out. Of course, every adult in New Hampshire is a mandatory reporter. Nobody's exempt from it, but you often don't know what's happening behind families' closed doors. And this is one example where teachers play a vital role in learning. So let me talk a little bit. The remote learning update, we've talked about the parent forums. I don't think we need to go too much further into that, but we are continuing to focus on making sure that experience is solid for everybody. As you know, we had talked about collecting survey data from families on Monday. The survey went out to families and to staff to just learn about what travel had occurred, whether there was illness that had occurred, and whether people had had close contact over the break. So we collected that data, and as an admin team, we were able to look at the data and understand it. The other thing is that, a lot of conversation has been had about the Harvard, now the Brown University model of tracking illness. And we look at those numbers daily. That's part of our protocol during the COVID briefing that we have each day. And I will tell you that all of us took a break from looking at it because we look at it every day. So we didn't look at it over Christmas. Nobody paid attention to the numbers. And when we logged in on Monday morning and took a look, we were very surprised to see where New Hampshire had shifted. So you have to understand that every day we're looking at this, we found New Hampshire to be, with Northern New England, Vermont, and Maine, in a really good spot. And we were, all states had their numbers increasing. All states at some point passed into the red zone, but yet they were still the better numbers. And what happened over the Christmas break is that New Hampshire jumped up to the 8th worst spot and really exceeded what was being seen in our neighboring New England states. That was a shock to our team to see that. The other thing is that looking at the immunization programs in the 3 Northern New England states, we learned that Vermont and Maine are inoculating roughly twice as many people per capita as New Hampshire was. So for whatever reason, the state wasn't getting the vaccines, or the state wasn't administering the vaccines, or what have you. Looking at the data just caused us to say, why are we lagging behind other New England states? Again, we're not paying attention to other parts of the country when it comes to that. We're really looking at our region of Northern New England. So that was another concern that we had. The next thing was just sort of following along with the fire department's postings that the rates in Litchfield are higher than what you see on WMUR. And, that caused us all to say, what numbers are we dealing with? Here we are trying to look at numbers, but then we're not even sure what the reliability of numbers are. And my understanding from the fire department is that they receive a list of COVID positive people in Litchfield, so that when they're responding to an emergency at a house, they'll know if there's COVID present in the house and can take proper precautions. And my understanding now is that there's a couple of things about that make, so it's not that the state number is wrong, and it's not that the fire department number is wrong. They're looking at something a little bit different. And I think that's really important to understand. It's not, do I trust the 55 or do I trust the 115? It's what is that number informing us of? And on some level, what the fire department is getting is a number that they leave a person on it for longer, because the assumption is that there are then other family in the house who are quarantining also and have been exposed and may not have gone to have a test. So this person, one parent in the house is COVID positive. The other parent develops symptoms and says, well, I know, I'll go to the doctor if it gets really bad, but otherwise I know what we have now. And so it's not reflected as a positive number that's reported on MUR, but the fire department has it as somebody who, chances are somebody else in the house is also positive. And the time period around which you want to watch that family household is extended because somebody had it. So this is why the numbers differ. And again, it's not that the exact number is 115 or the exact number is 55. They're all kind of fluid based upon the lens that they're using to take a look at it. So, but now that we better understand that, I think it has us pausing to say, okay, so if we take the 55 as the true number, we know there's an inflation of that number of something by people who haven't had the test, who are asymptomatic, et cetera. And so just in talking our way through the numbers, that's another reality that we have. The next thing I want to share with the board is that, the new strain of quicker spreading, I guess, coronavirus that was first detected in England and then was detected in California and then was detected in Colorado has now been detected in Saratoga, New York. And so all of a sudden this thing overseas has come fairly close to us, and we don't quite know what that means. And it's interesting too, if you look at it, the 3 cases in the US are all people who haven't been to England. They're not even sure how they picked up the new strain. It's just something that they've encountered. And so, it came up in the meeting in talking about town meeting, but just this idea that there's a new strain now that we have to be aware of threw a big monkey wrench and uncertainty into things for us. The other thing is that in listening to remote families, but also in-person families, the yo-yo effect, we're in, we're out, we're in, we're out, that's wearing on people at this point because you're pivoting and shifting and pivoting and shifting. And the faculty have also echoed this, by the way, that, okay, so now I've got to do this. Oh, now I've got to do this. And so the idea that we're going to bring students back in tomorrow was sort of like, hang on a second, with all this other stuff that we have, are we ready to, pull on the yo-yo again versus taking a little bit more of a deliberate approach to where we are. So our recommendation and thinking at this point is to also stay out next week, to take the time to see where the numbers are, to see exactly what unfolds. The other factor I didn't say is, you hear about gatherings over Christmas and New Year and the impact that's going to be had. And I've had a conversation with a couple of board members actually that, 10 days out is generally seen as the period, but it's complicated by there's the 10 days out if you had the direct contact, but then if you had contact with somebody else on day 5, there's another wave window that exists within that 10 days. So it almost makes it like a 20-day window because you've got the initial exposure. If somebody's symptomatic, then spreads. It takes longer than the 10 days to actually realize the impact of that. So our thinking is that we we really feel that January 19th is the point at which we could bring students back in. And for reasons mentioned earlier in the meeting, it's beneficial for Campbell, which is in the process of ending a year and starting a year, that it will allow them the opportunity for face-to-face closure piece and face-to-face startup piece at the 4x4 transition that's going to take place in the last week of January.
So we're going to do this in February too?
No, and again, we're going back to, we do not like the yo-yoing. So our sense is that we want to get the kids back in. We've heard loud and clear from a majority of our families that they want to have their students back in, but we also want to do it smartly and safely. And if we take that extra week, it's almost preventative to having to yo-yo back out again at some point in February if we end up with staffing concerns, or if we end up with outbreaks, if you would, or a lot of unknowns. So our feeling is that that week is a smart choice to make right now, given the overall climate of what we have. And it's a better chance of guaranteeing that we can get in and stay in through February vacation. I'm not ready to talk about after February vacation yet. But these are all the things that we're talking about and have on the radar. So.
So we're going to be notifying parents this evening or tomorrow as far as an additional week?
It's probably already on Facebook. Bam.
I bet it is on Facebook.
Well, sure.
But the answer is yes. We had communicated to families that we would let them know no later than Thursday night.
Yep.
And so we'll get a formal announcement out tomorrow. I feel like that's enough. It's not enough, is it ever enough? But it gives lead time toward work arrangements and so forth for next week.
Well, GMS teachers need a lot more prep time than some of the other teachers for cutting and pasting and handing out paper. So this should give them a couple days.
And in our discussion, I mean, the admin team understands that what we are good at is in-person learning, that's having the child in front of us. That's what we do. That's our wheelhouse, if you would. But to do that, we really want to approach it slowly enough that we can do it sustainably and not keep this yo-yo going. We had a great streak, make no mistake about it. If you look at from the opening of school till, a little closure at Griffin, and then we brought the kids back. Then we had the middle school. Thanksgiving, it started to get a little bit more challenging for us. We were able to bring the students back in December, but I'll tell you, we were digging deep to pull that off. We had a lot of staff covering classes, and there was a lot of deep digging in order to have that be successful. And what we don't want to do is pull it back too fast and then have to go back out again because we have all of these unknowns I just talked about. That another week gives us a chance to look at it, study it, think about it, and get it right so that hopefully we can stay in through February break.
I think by giving it the additional week, as much as I'd rather see my kids and all the kids back in school, I think that additional week, especially from the holiday period, gives you that time to reassess the numbers, and especially where the state is spiking. But like I asked you, it's like, I realize the state is spiking, but it's also a lot in the North Country right now. That if you take a look at half of the state wasn't red before, now the whole state is red. But an additional week, I think will definitely give us a better picture and, get our streak going again on the 19th. All right. Anything else?
No, unless you have something else for me on the COVID. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to share with the board, and then I'm going to share with the faculty and staff the current numbers chart that we're using to track this. So we've tweaked it a little bit, and that's the reason I didn't share it is that it's interesting in our COVID briefing because I've changed the way we collect the data. I think it's actually better, but we've been double counting. It's a little bit confusing, and we've worked our way through it. So now we're ready to share with you the numbers and what we're looking at. But we wanted to track the leaves a little bit differently because it was confusing in the old chart. So that will be coming to the board tomorrow and to the teachers and staff tomorrow.
Mike, I have a quick question. I'm sorry if my sound is off. Can we post on the webpage? There's a tab for COVID updates.
Yep.
Is it possible to post on there, not necessarily the breakdown, staff, students, or by school, but just the number of cases that we currently have, maybe the number of students who are quarantined, just so, because the school's dashboard for New Hampshire is so delayed and not accurate, I think it would help people kind of understand that's part of the decision-making process. If we can say, yeah, we have this many staff members out, we have this many students out. Is that a thing we can do? I understand the whole HIPAA violation thing, but
No, there's no HIPAA violation in the numbers that we're sharing with folks. And so I am comfortable putting a link to the Google spreadsheet for the public to see. It does not say in there that so-and-so is out for, this medical condition. It just says how many COVID positive staff are there. And I think it's important that people understand we've had COVID positive staff who have continued to teach. They have taught every single day. So even though they're home where they need to be, they've been teaching their classes. We had a staff member at LMS that would teach in the morning and take a nap at lunchtime in order to be ready to teach in the afternoon. So, that story, that people have to understand that some of the people who are home teaching is because they need to be home because they're COVID positive. We've also had 2 staff members who have been in the hospital for extended periods of time because of the COVID. Very worried about both of them. The horror stories you hear about people, ending up on oxygen and so forth, it's happened to 2 staff members. And when the LEA has expressed to us concerns about doing the job, it's because they want to be protected and not be the one who ends up in that scenario. So, this is not easy stuff as we're working our way through it. And we're also tracking on that sheet now, when you get it, that there are, we're trying to determine where the spread occurred. Was it community spread? Was it school-based spread? Or is it truly unknown spread? And so you'll see on there that because the governor and the commissioner keep saying, well, there's not a lot of evidence of school-based spread. And I said, we need to track that because hey, where does so-and-so think that they picked it up? And there's been a lot of anecdotal stuff. We now want to track, was it school? Was it community? Or is it unknown? So that
we go back on the 19th, we start fresh because kids haven't been in school since the 23rd of December. I can't say my kid got it in school because he's been home.
Right.
Yeah.
But even then, even if the kids are in school, you can't necessarily track that a teacher or a student
I know.
or anyone else in the school got it from in school. I mean, it's really difficult to determine that unless all of a sudden you have a cluster, and then that at least some of those members most likely got it.
There were staff members who got it, their husbands got it, and then one of their kids didn't get it. It's just the most bizarre spread I've ever.
Well, or the kid got it and was asymptomatic.
Right.
So
60% of cases, according to the state, they can't tie it to any known risk factor. So that's the bottom line. 4 out of 10, you may have an idea of where it came from, but the rest, most of it, you don't know.
Right. So, I mean, you can try doing the tracking, but it's kind of like useless information at the same time. Because if you say all of a sudden oh, well, it happened in school, well, it's too late now anyway, because whoever got it, got it. But, I mean, if you can, then track it.
Yep. We're going to try. So, for example, the cluster, that would be an example where it was identified. Here's the person who had it, sort of subject A, and then these people who had close contact ended up with it, et cetera. So you could do that. We'll try our best.
All right. Thank you. Is the manifest going around?
Yes. Well said.
All right, that'll bring us to non-public. RSA 91-A:311. Aye.
Aye.
Suppose we have to use names, right? Tina?
yes.
Rob?
Yep.
Tara?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Brian? Yes. We're non-public.